The rain was coming down in sheets as I drove home, the wipers of my old Volvo struggling to keep up. I'm Bastian, 46, and I work as a software engineer in Seattle. It's a good job, pays the bills, and used to give me a sense of accomplishment. But lately, that feeling had been replaced by annoying unease, a feeling that something was off with my wife, Clementine. We'd been married for 18 years. We met in college, two awkward souls drawn together by a shared love of old movies and bad jokes. Over the years, we'd built a life together, a comfortable, predictable life. We had a nice house in the suburbs, two cars, a dog named Watson, and a routine that was as familiar as the lines on my own hands. But lately, Clementine had been distant. She started working late more often, claiming deadlines and urgent projects at her job as a marketing manager. She was always on her phone, texting and smiling to herself, but when I asked who she was talking to, she'd brush it off with a vague, just work stuff. She'd stopped initiating intimacy, and when I tried, she seemed like I was inconveniencing her. I tried to talk to her about it, to ask if everything was okay, but she'd just say I was imagining things, that I was being paranoid. "You're always so insecure, Bastian," she'd say, her voice laced with a weariness that stung more than any outright accusation. I wanted to believe her, I really did. I loved her, and the thought of her being unhappy, of her wanting to leave me, was unbearable. But the feeling persisted, a knot in my stomach that tightened with each passing day. One evening, Clementine told me she had to go to a conference in Portland for a few days. "It's really important, Bastian," she said, her eyes avoiding mine. "I need to make a good impression if I want to get that promotion." I wanted to offer to drive her to the airport, but she insisted on taking an Uber. "It'll be easier," she said. "I don't want you to have to worry about parking." As I watched her get into the black SUV, a wave of loneliness washed over me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing her, that she was slipping away from me like sand through my fingers. The next day, I was working from home when I got a call from my neighbor, Evander. Evander was a retired police officer, a gruff but kind man who always kept an eye on things in the neighborhood. "Bastian," he said, his voice low and serious. "I saw Clementine yesterday. She didn't go to the airport." My heart leaped into my throat. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "I saw her getting into a car with a man," Evander said. "They drove off in the opposite direction of the airport." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. The air left my lungs and I struggled to breathe. "Are you sure it was her?" I managed to ask. "Positive," Evander said. "I know Clementine and I know that car. It belongs to that new guy who moved into the condo complex downtown, the one who drives the fancy sports car." My mind raced. Who was this man? What was Clementine doing with him? Was she cheating on me? I thanked Evander and hung up the phone, my hands shaking. I needed to know the truth. I couldn't live with this uncertainty any longer. I spent the rest of the day in a daze, trying to work but unable to focus. Every time my phone buzzed, I jumped, expecting it to be Clementine, but it never was. That evening, I decided to do something I'd never done before. I went through Clementine's phone. I knew it was wrong, a violation of her privacy, but I couldn't help myself. I needed to know. Her phone was locked with a passcode, but I knew her birthday. I typed it in and the phone unlocked. I felt a surge of guilt, but I pushed it aside. I went straight to her messages. There were dozens of texts from an unknown number, a number I didn't recognize. I opened the messages and my blood ran cold. The messages were filled with explicit, intimate details that made it clear that Clementine was having an affair. The man's name was Silas, and he was showering her with compliments, telling her how beautiful, how intelligent, how desirable she was. And Clementine was eating it up, responding in kind, telling him how unhappy she was in her marriage, how she felt trapped and unappreciated. I scrolled through the messages, each one a stab in the heart. I saw pictures of them together, pictures taken in restaurants, in parks, even in our own bed. I felt sick, betrayed, and utterly devastated. I sat there for hours, reading and rereading the messages, trying to make sense of it all. How could she do this to me? How could she lie to me, betray me, and risk everything we'd built together? As I sat there, reeling from the shock, I noticed something else in Clementine's phone, a folder labeled Financials. I opened it, and what I found there made my stomach churn. Clementine had been secretly transferring money out of our joint account into a private account in her name. She'd been slowly draining our savings, accumulating a small fortune without my knowledge. I realized then that this wasn't just about an affair. This was about something much bigger, something much more sinister. Clementine wasn't just cheating on me. She was planning to leave me, to take everything I had, and to start a new life with this Silas. The rage that had been simmering inside me finally boiled over. I felt like I was going to explode. I wanted to confront her, to scream at her, to demand an explanation. But I knew that wouldn't do any good. She'd just lie to me, manipulate me, and try to twist the situation to her advantage. I needed to be smart, to be strategic. I needed to gather evidence, to protect myself, and to make sure that Clementine didn't get away with her scheme. I spent the next few days documenting everything, taking screenshots of the messages, copying the financial records, and consulting with a lawyer. I learned that Clementine's actions were not only grounds for divorce but also potentially criminal. She had committed fraud, theft, and possibly even identity theft. I also learned that Silas was not who he claimed to be. He wasn't a successful businessman as Clementine believed. He was a con artist, a professional swindler who preyed on vulnerable women, seducing them, stealing their money, and then disappearing without a trace. I knew then that I had to act fast, not only to protect myself but also to protect Clementine from this dangerous man. I decided to confront them, to expose their lies, and to bring them to justice. I waited for Clementine to return from her conference in Portland. When she walked through the door, she looked tired and stressed, but she put on a fake smile and gave me a perfunctory hug. "How was the conference?" I asked, my voice cold and controlled. "It was fine," she said, avoiding my gaze. "A lot of meetings, a lot of presentations. I'm exhausted." "I'm sure you are," I said. "But I think we need to talk." She looked at me, her eyes widening slightly. "About what?" she asked, her voice trembling. I pulled out her phone and showed her the messages, the pictures, the financial records. Her face drained of color and she gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "What is this?" she stammered, her voice barely audible. "This is the truth, Clementine," I said, my voice rising. "This is the evidence of your betrayal, your lies, and your deceit." She started to cry, tears streaming down her face. "Bastian, I can explain," she sobbed. "It's not what you think. Don't lie to me, Clementine," I said, my voice hard. "I know everything. I know about Silas, I know about the money, I know about everything." She collapsed onto the couch, her body shaking with sobs. "I'm so sorry, Bastian," she cried. "I don't know what I was thinking. I made a mistake." "A mistake?" I scoffed. "This wasn't a mistake, Clementine. This was a deliberate, calculated act of betrayal. You planned this, you schemed this, and you were willing to destroy everything we had for your own selfish desires." She looked up at me, her eyes filled with desperation. "Please, Bastian," she begged. "Forgive me, I'll do anything. I'll give you the money back, I'll break up with Silas, I'll do whatever it takes." "It's too late, Clementine," I said, my voice flat. "I can't forgive you, I can't trust you. Our marriage is over." I walked out of the house, leaving her there, sobbing and alone. I didn't look back. I knew that I was doing the right thing, that I was finally freeing myself from her web of lies and deceit. But I also knew that the pain of her betrayal would stay with me for a long time, a constant reminder of the woman I had loved, the woman who had broken my heart. I went to the police and reported Silas for fraud and theft. They launched an investigation, and within a few weeks, they had arrested him. He was eventually convicted and sentenced to several years in prison. I filed for divorce from Clementine, and the proceedings were swift and brutal. She tried to fight me, to claim that I was being unreasonable, but I had all the evidence I needed to prove her guilt. The judge ruled in my favor, granting me a divorce and awarding me a significant portion of our assets. Clementine was left with nothing. She lost her husband, her lover, and her money. She was ostracized by her friends and family, who were disgusted by her actions. She was forced to move out of our house and into a small apartment in a rundown part of town. I heard through mutual friends that she was miserable, that she regretted everything she had done. But I didn't care. She had made her choices and she had to live with the consequences. I moved on with my life, slowly but surely rebuilding myself. I focused on my work, my hobbies, and my friendships. I started dating again, but I was cautious, wary of getting hurt again. One day I received a letter from Clementine. It was a long, rambling letter filled with apologies and regrets. She begged me to forgive her, to give her another chance. She claimed that she had changed, that she had learned from her mistakes, and that she was a better person now. I read the letter and I felt a flicker of something inside me, a faint echo of the love I had once felt for her. But I knew that I couldn't go back. I couldn't trust her and I couldn't risk getting hurt again. I wrote her a short, polite response, thanking her for the letter but telling her that I couldn't forgive her. I wished her well and asked her not to contact me again. I never heard from her again. I don't know what happened to her and I don't want to know. She is a chapter of my life that I have closed, a painful memory that I have tried to forget. I have learned a lot from this experience. I have learned that people are not always who they seem to be, that love can be blind, and that betrayal can come from the most unexpected places. But I have also learned that I am stronger than I thought, that I can survive even the most devastating heartbreak, and that I can find happiness again, even after the darkest of times. Years passed, and I eventually met someone new, a kind, intelligent, and honest woman named Bront. We fell in love and we built a new life together, a life based on trust, respect, and mutual admiration. I finally found the happiness that I had thought I had lost forever. But even now, years later, I still think about Clementine sometimes. I wonder what she is doing, how she is living, and whether she ever truly regrets what she did. But I don't dwell on it. I have moved on and I am happy. And that is all that matters. One evening, Bront and I were walking along the beach, watching the sunset. The sky was ablaze with color and the air was filled with the sound of the waves. I turned to Bront, took her hand, and smiled. "I love you," I said. "I love you too, Bastian," she said, squeezing my hand. In that moment, I knew that I had finally found peace, that I had finally healed from the wounds of the past, and that I was ready to embrace the future with open arms. Clementine was a distant memory, a ghost of a life that was no longer mine, and I was grateful for that. I returned to my quiet life, the scars of Clementine's betrayal still there but faded like old tattoos. I never forgot what happened, but I refused to let it define me. I continued to work, to love, and to live, always remembering the lessons I had learned and always striving to be a better man. The rain still falls in Seattle, but now when I look out the window, I see the sun shining through the clouds, a reminder that even after the darkest storms, there is always hope for a brighter tomorrow. And I knew deep in my heart that I had finally found my way back to the light. One day, a few years after Bront and I were married, I received an unexpected phone call. It was from a woman I didn't recognize, a woman with a shaky, hesitant voice. "Is this Bastian?" she asked. "Yes, it is," I replied, my brow furrowing in confusion. "My name is Esmeralda," she said. "I'm Clementine's sister." My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't heard from anyone in Clementine's family since the divorce. "Esmeralda," I said, my voice cautious. "What can I do for you?" There was a long pause and I could hear Esmeralda taking a deep breath. "Clementine is very sick," she said, her voice cracking with emotion. "She has cancer and she doesn't have much time left." I was stunned into silence. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to hang up the phone, to shut out this unwelcome intrusion from my past. But another part of me, a part that I thought I had buried long ago, felt a flicker of compassion. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said finally, my voice subdued. "She wants to see you," Esmeralda said. "She knows that she doesn't deserve it, but she wants to apologize, to ask for your forgiveness one last time." I hesitated. I didn't know if I could face Clementine again, not after everything that had happened. But I also knew that I couldn't live with myself if I refused her dying wish. "Where is she?" I asked. "She's at the Seattle Grace Hospital," Esmeralda said. "In the oncology ward." I told Esmeralda that I would think about it and call her back. I hung up the phone and sat there for a long time, staring into space, trying to process what I had just heard. I talked to Bront about it that evening. She listened patiently without interrupting, and when I was finished, she took my hand and squeezed it gently. "It's your decision, Bastian," she said. "But I think you should go. Not for her, but for yourself. To find closure, to say goodbye, and to finally put the past behind you." I knew that Bront was right. I needed to do this, not for Clementine, but for myself. I called Esmeralda back and told her that I would come to the hospital the next day. The next afternoon, I found myself standing outside Clementine's hospital room, my heart pounding in my chest. I took a deep breath, steeled myself, and pushed open the door. Clementine was lying in the bed, pale and frail. Her hair was thin and patchy, and her eyes were sunken and tired. She looked like a shadow of the woman I had once known. She saw me and her eyes widened, a flicker of recognition and surprise in their depths. "Bastian," she whispered, her voice weak and raspy. "Clementine," I said, my voice subdued. I walked over to the bed and sat down in the chair next to her. We sat in silence for a few moments, looking at each other, the weight of the past hanging heavy in the air. "I'm sorry," she said finally, her voice barely audible. "I'm so sorry for everything I did. I was wrong, I was selfish, and I hurt you deeply. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I hope that one day you can find it in your heart to forgive me." Tears welled up in my eyes, and I struggled to speak. I forgive you, Clementine," I said, my voice choked with emotion. "I forgive you," she smiled, a faint, weary smile. "Thank you, Bastian," she said. "That means more to me than you know." We talked for a while longer about the past, about the present, and about the future. She told me that she had realized the error of her ways, that she had learned from her mistakes, and that she was ready to face whatever came next. Before I left, I took her hand and squeezed it gently. "Goodbye, Clementine," I said. "Goodbye, Bastian," she said. "And thank you." I walked out of the hospital room, feeling a sense of peace that I hadn't felt in years. I had finally forgiven Clementine, and in doing so, I had finally freed myself from the last vestiges of the past. I never saw Clementine again. She died a few weeks later, surrounded by her family. I didn't attend her funeral, but I sent flowers and a card expressing my condolences. Life goes on, even after the most devastating betrayals. The scars may remain, but they fade with time, and eventually they become a part of who we are. I am grateful for the lessons I have learned, for the love that I have found, and for the peace that I have finally achieved. And I know that even after the darkest storms, there is always hope for a brighter tomorrow.